Hello, all. My name is Jordyn Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer behind this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience, and also the website and all of the other social media. First things first, if you want to get my written reports, when you go on my website, which I will link below, you can go to one of my other forecasts that I've done, and it'll automatically, as you read, it'll pop up for you to subscribe to that, and then check your email because it wants to double check your subscription that it was actually you who was wanting to do that. So I wanted to get that out of the way because I've had a few people say that. And I link all types of things on that website. And if you subscribe, you will get those notifications in your email. Okay, so I got that out of the way. What I want to talk about today is, and I will pull up the chart in just a minute, I have an affinity for asteroids and planetary nodes and phases. I think that you guys who follow me or subscribe to this channel have gleaned that bit of insight. Today, what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about the asteroid Pallas Athene, because in today's chart and for the next couple of days, she is going to be what is called in conjunct to Venus in the sign of Taurus. Pallas is currently residing in the sign of Sagittarius. And this in conjunct is called a gibbous phase in conjunct. And the gibbous phase is very much where we can self-improve. It has a Virgo-like feel. If someone has a gibbous phase in conjunct in their chart, whenever they're resisting their own evolutionary growth and a transit happens and triggers that point in their own natal chart, what will happen is usually some type of crisis, because that gibbous has the dynamic of crisis, only because when we resist evolution, crisis happens in order for us to self-improve. What better way? This is a universal experience. Anytime that any of us have had a crisis in our lives, what do? We start asking, why is this happening? What is going on? What can I improve? What can I fix? So it has this flavor to it. So there's a couple of things that I want to talk about in regard to this transit, but first I want to give a good foundation on Pallas and also how Pallas Athene is what we call an octave transformer in evolutionary astrology, meaning that it helps us to assimilate information between the lower octave and the higher octave. So when we're thinking of what does Pallas Athene transform, what is the higher octave? Well, that's Uranus, and the lower octave would be Mercury. So in anyone's chart, they have a Uranus somewhere by house and by sign. And when you look at Uranus in someone's chart, you can understand, let me turn off my air conditioner, you can understand where they have experienced trauma and how that conditions this lifetime. So Uranus is all of our prior life memories, and it is our long-term memory. Our long-term memory and our prior life memories correspond to 80% of the choices that we make. It conditions this. And Uranus is about objectivity. It wants us to objectify our reality. And this is so that as we objectify our reality or the circumstances that are playing out in our life, we can get in touch with our emotional dynamics. Because, as I've said so many times, and I think it's very imperative for people to know this, is that we do not evolve through intellectualizing things. Yes, it helps us. That's why there's the objectivity. But to really evolve, we have to experience our emotional dynamics through pure emotion, through the emotional body. With Uranus, what ends up happening is Uranus correlates, and same with Aquarius in the 11th house, it correlates to trauma that we experience that is stored within our long-term memory. And sometimes this trauma can be seen that has happened in the current lifetime, but it also, when we're looking at someone's natal chart, it corresponds with the trauma that's occurred in prior lifetimes. Okay, so then we have Mercury, which is the lower octave of Uranus. And Mercury helps us with about 20% of the choices that we're making. And this is because this is the information that we're taking in, and it's our short-term memory, and it's our left brain, the logical, linear way of taking in information. So these two work in tandem. And the best way to think about it is let's put Uranus in the 8th house. Someone who has Uranus in the 8th house is someone who, in prior lifetimes, has experienced traumatic events around people who have abandoned them, manipulated them, or who have created distrust within them. So a person who has Uranus in their natal chart will naturally come into this lifetime wanting to objectify where they are, like their the reality that they're in, the types of people that they come into contact with. They're going to be wanting to feel out a situation before they make a choice, before they discern whether or not to have that person in their life. And sometimes they're going to have key people come in where they re-experience the proverbial rug pulled out from underneath them. And this is also because Uranus in the 8th house can be someone who's applied trust to people that they shouldn't have. So they've been learning about this. In Jungian terms, Uranus is the individuated unconscious, or what we would call our subconscious, okay? And it's really important for us to understand how this correlates to our choice making in this lifetime. Within our soul, we're still experiencing these long-term memories that are deep within our subconscious. So wherever your Uranus is, you want to look at that placement. You want to look at where Aquarius is in your natal chart by house. And you want to look at the aspects that these are making in the planetary ruler of Uranus itself. So, and if you're a seasoned astrologer or a student of astrology, you would want to look at the planetary south node of Uranus, because it really gives an idea of how we're objectifying life and where we have a sense of wanting to detach from something. With Mercury, it's lower octave. Let's say you have that Uranus in your 8th house and you have experienced abandonment and betrayal and misapplied trust in another. You've been manipulated. You've had situations, especially it's the 8th house, dealing with intimate others, of where relationships have ended abruptly in prior lifetimes because of the misapplied trust or someone duping you. You will come into this life being very, very, like I said, wanting to objectify, is this someone who I can trust? You would be standoffish before you allowed someone in. With Mercury, that is the 20% it's of the short-term memory. Uranus, 80% long-term memory, helps us make our choices from the conditioning from those prior life experiences of traumatic events. With Mercury, though, wherever it falls in your own natal chart, you're looking at how that long-term memory is affecting the short-term memory. The information that you're taking in the present moment of, can this person be trustworthy? What information are they sending to me about themselves? Can I discern whether or not I should trust this person? So let's put Mercury, for the person who has Uranus in the 8th house, let's put Mercury in the 9th house. They would be taking in information on an intuitive level to see, is this instinctually, am I getting a gut reaction? Is this someone I should trust? From the feedback that you're receiving while interacting with this person, all the while that Uranus is playing out on a subconscious level. A Mercury in the 9th house with that Uranus in the 8th house, though, can also be what I like to call being Pollyanna. It's like trying to see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? And so we can see how this really can condition someone and how they experience dynamics. Now let's bring in Pallas Athene. Pallas Athene in someone's chart is really speaking to how they're transforming that information from Mercury and applying it in a Uranian sense. So it transforms the octaves. When we're looking at it in transit, like we're going to do today, it's really interesting because Pluto is still in Aquarius and it's ruled by Uranus and Taurus. And that Uranus and Taurus is ruled by Venus, transiting the sign of Taurus right now. And that Venus, Uranus's ruler, is in conjunct Pallas Athene in the sign of Sagittarius. What is sitting next to Uranus in the sky right now? Jupiter, Pallas's planetary ruler at the moment. So it's pulling in all of this content as a way to transform it. And if you think about Mercury is still in its post-shadow period, Mercury was retrograde during the last eclipse. It was in its pre-shadow period during the Libra lunar eclipse. So we have been taking in a lot of information, Mercury, that we're needing to assimilate depending on where these transits are happening and falling in your own natal chart. A lot of subconscious memories could be being seeded into your consciousness right now, so that way there can be a liberation that happens. That way it's not conditioning reality so much anymore. Because sometimes we're not even realizing that we're projecting old trauma onto the present moment. So I want to pull up this chart for all of us to look at, so we can dive into it a little bit more. If my screen will share. Let's see what's going on here. Okay. There we go. So if we look at this chart, this is for England, Greenwich. And because I'm using Greenwich, we can look at the planets not just by their signs, but by also their house, okay? Their houses that they fall in. And Pallas Athene is in the 5th house and it's retrograde. And you can't see a line here, but it is in what we call that gibbous phase in conjunct to Venus. So let's talk about all of this for a second. As a baseline, Pluto in the 6th house in Aquarius is very much on a collective level, the sense of us needing to self-improve upon humanity and look at the trauma that's been occurring within humanity and to liberate from the dynamics that are conditioning reality right now as a way to self-improve. That means that Pluto and Aquarius is where we're trying to liberate from any type of crystallized beliefs or conditioning, anything that we've learned that really isn't in alignment with natural law. Then we have Pluto's ruler, Uranus, okay, the higher octave of Mercury, and Pallas being that octave transformer. So Uranus and Taurus ruling this Pluto and it falling in the 10th house is very much on a collective level about us liberating from conditioning that has affected our sense of values and the ways that we share resources and the ways that we value and view land or societal structures. It's all of these kinds of dynamics that we're on a global level, we're over identifying, not everyone, but the masses, the majority, the consensus is over identifying with these types of values that are actually perpetuating trauma. And on a collective level, we're meant to self-improve upon this. And then we look at Uranus being ruled by this Venus in the sign of Taurus. This is a time period where we're really needing to focus in on what feels natural and authentic to our relationships to ourselves, and in the 10th house on national global levels, okay? And that Uranus is saying to liberate from that, to clear space in order to self-improve and to understand what more natural, timeless values are. And this is further demonstrated by this gibbous phase in conjunct with Pallas Athene in the sign of Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter, that is in a new phase conjunction to Uranus. Sagittarius is about natural law. It is about the laws that are intrinsic to nature. It's why it resonates with shamanism and indigenous peoples, or even the daemon soul archetype, which I will make a video about that soon. But if you're a student of EA, then you know what that is. I'm not going to get into it today for time's sake, but with Pallas Athene in the sign of Sag retrograde, we can tell that there's something that's wanting to be resolved, and it's falling within the 5th house of this chart. So it's a way to creatively actualize on a collective level. And that 5th house is about us seeing how within nature, everything has its own reason for existing, and that it's equal to others, and that it's unique in its own individuality, from animals to plants to human form. And it's about the totality of nature that is rooted in giving, sharing, and inclusion, as opposed to exclusion or elitism. And so we can see that with this Pluto in the 6th house, ruled by this Uranus, self-improvement, liberation from old values, beliefs, anything on a global scale that we have overly identified with that is actually distorting natural law, we're needing to liberate from. And Pallas Athene in a gibbous in conjunct to Venus is really symbolizing this 6th house Virgo feel, because it's in a gibbous in conjunct. So the need to self-improve upon what are natural, timeless principles that are rooted in natural law, giving, sharing, and inclusion. What are the laws within nature that we're needing to recover where they've become distorted? How do we liberate from these distortions? And with Pallas Athene being ruled by Jupiter in a new phase to Uranus, we're meant to liberate from the beliefs that impede upon us knowing nature herself and how to heal on a global level. Jupiter in Taurus has been about expanding upon this relationship on a collective level. On personal levels, when we look at this, this is a time period for us to be reconnecting with our unique soul individuality and what feels authentic to our actual nature. And a lot of us are recovering our nature. And I want to bring in Mercury in Aries because it's in its post-shadow period. And it is the lower octave of Uranus. We are meant to be taking in new information now that helps us to understand through cause and effect what feels authentic and intrinsic and unique to each one of us individually. And also what desires that we're meant to act upon right now as a way to break new ground, as a way to recover this on a global level. There's so much richness going on in this chart. Venus, the ruler of this south node, which is in conjunct Pallas Athene, the octave transformer between Uranus and Mercury, is really about how these imbalances that have been created from the distortion of natural law, from man-made law, right? The distortions therein that have distorted natural law is highlighting all of the imbalances. And we can see right now on a collective level that we're meant to improve upon this, to liberate from these dynamics. I've been talking about it for a long time, that Saturn in Pisces is about dissolving man-made laws that impede upon us understanding these naturally occurring truths. And Saturn in Pisces is still in conjunct the South Node. And it is in what we call a full phase in conjunct. And a full phase in conjunct has a Scorpio field. There's confrontations happening on a global level that are highlighting the imbalances that are occurring across the scale. We're seeing it in nationalism. We're seeing it in the wars that are occurring. We are seeing it in the misuse of natural resources. We're seeing it within global warming. All of the dynamics are being highlighted in the extremes that are occurring on a global scale right now. And we're meant to be confronted with it. So that way a shift of self-improvement can take place. And with Pallas Athene in conjunct this Venus right now, we're meant to self-improve upon our own individual values. Let me stop this share so I can speak more to all of this, but I did want to say this is a time where we can have deep on personal levels intuitive insight with Pallas in that sign of Sag that helps us to even transform our own conditioning and our own values and the ways that how we've been conditioned have affected our sense of security, self-esteem, the ability to listen to ourselves, and the need to expand upon what feels authentic to each one of our own unique soul individuality that is actually rooted in its natural sense instead of a distorted sense that comes from how we've been conditioned. If we think about conditioning, my dog wants in. If we think about conditioning, come on. From early on, we are learning about what it is we're meant to value, what it is that we're meant to believe in, what it is that we're meant to, how we do relationships, how we value relationships, how we value other people. Think about even your own early childhood development. Think about the traumas that have occurred in your life. Are you someone that those traumas conditioned your reality? And now, how does that present itself when you're trying to be close to someone else or you're trying to have friendships or intimate partnerships? This Pallas Athene in conjunct to Venus can really help us to transform our value systems and our inner relationship to self. And it's through having us have this deep burst of intuitive insight that helps us expand upon our relationship to self right now. On a global scale, there's such a myth around like, oh, eventually we're just all gonna wake up to what's going on and things are gonna change. All we can do right now is do our personal work and be a mirror and a reflection for people who feel alone doing it, so that they know that they're able to, that they're capable of doing this. This is a time period where we're meant to transform our relationships to self, to look at the hard stuff, to look at where we're needing to be confronted with our own conditioning and where we've over-identified with it. And when we're looking at traumatic experiences, I mean, just think about if you have ever been really hurt by a parent. If you're a woman and it was your father, you might be distrustful of men, or you might acquiesce to men because you want to you're getting your value out of that because you didn't get a healthy sense of self-esteem when you were younger. On the flip side, you know, and it can be working out these types of dynamics in your adult relationships. On the flip side, for men, there can be father and or mother wounds as well, where, just think about what goes on in the world. Men who on a very distorted spectrum, you see like the serial killers who are enraged at women because of some dynamic with their own mother, or they've had an absent father and they don't know how to be a parent in this lifetime either, so they have a child and they abandon it. With women, we can see the same dynamics. It really just depends, and these are very generalized dynamics that are more tangible, things that we see every day. But I challenge each one of us to ask and pose ourselves the questions about what we're wanting to know about our trauma that we're needing to connect with through our emotional body right now, because that Pallas Athene and Sag can really help us to intuit that information, meaning that when we pose a Sag type question, we're pondering on something. Jupiter, our intuition at some point is going to kick in and give us that information at the moment that we need it. It'll help us to understand what it is that we're needing to understand about that. And with Jupiter and Taurus, it's to help us expand and grow our relationship to self as we liberate from these constructs of where we've over identified with conditioning that really just perpetuates our own trauma. And so I wanted to jump on here today to talk about this because I was looking at it and I found it very fascinating. The other thing with Pallas is that for women, this can be where they have father issues. This can also be where for either genders, the social constructs of gender, which is definitely changing right now, because new language is being formed around how people identify. But Pallas Athene is androgynous. If you just think of the myth, she was born from her father Jupiter, from his head, and it was because he swallowed his other children, and he swallowed Pallas's mother while she was pregnant with him, because and then that turned out to be his favorite child was Pallas Athene, and she embodied androgyny. She was known some as a goddess who stayed whole into herself. She wouldn't submit. She didn't want to have children. She was a warrioress. She fought. She had keen, deep insight and had a shamanistic quality about her because of tapping into her intuition. She would take the information she was receiving and she would be able to use her higher intelligence, Uranus, as a way to have creative actualization and to spark creativity and her own divine intelligence. And so I just want to say that whatever information that you have been gathering throughout that Mercury retrograde season during the eclipses and are still, there can be deep insight that you're meant to act upon now as a way to self-improve from the trauma of the past that has affected your relationship to self, your self-esteem, and your ability to listen to your inner voice. And this deep insight that comes through Pallas's transit of transforming that higher octave of Uranus and that lower octave of Mercury can really help us to liberate from these dynamics, self-improve, to transform, to get in touch with what is most natural about ourselves, to have self-love, self-dignity, self-respect, and ultimately a liberation from the chains that we feel like bind us right now. And so it is a great time to utilize this Pallas Athene energy of posing questions. What do I want to know? Why am I stuck in this pattern? I know that this is connected to my trauma, but what do I need to become aware of? And then Mercury and Aries is literally when we act on this knowledge and we create this action, we get this feedback that helps us to learn about ourselves to self-improve even further. So this is what I wanted to talk about today. Just, to get on here and to share my love of the asteroids. Um, I think what I'm gonna do is do like an asteroid series where I'm gonna go over some of my favorite asteroids and really use it as a teaching moment, not necessarily with the transits, but what these asteroids represent, how you can utilize them in your own natal chart. And also, I want you guys to know if you're a student of astrology and you want to learn, I do tutoring. I tutor a lot of people. I love doing it. I love connecting with you guys. And also, if you're wanting to understand your own evolutionary story of this lifetime and past lives and how these transits can really be used to help you, go and book a session. Like, I love validating people, and that's usually what astrology tends to be. Um, and I like to think of myself as a non-judgmental and compassionate person. I think that people feel that because of the clients that I get. Um, I get all walks of life, and I love meeting those of you behind the screen. So let's utilize this Pallas Athene energy to self-improve and to reconnect with our own unique individuality right now, to get more in touch with natural law as we really liberate from this type of conditioning that is on a global scale. I think some of us want to believe that it doesn't have an impact on us and our choice making, but it does. No one is unscathed from this, okay? And if you're really wanting to ground into your relationship, this is beautiful energy to do this. That really helps us tap into our intuition and our own soul God-given gifts of being able to do that. The other thing before I wrap this up that I do want to say is I think so often on when we're getting into spiritual types of cosmologies, these types of sciences like astrology, there's this misconception that people like me or other astrologers that you see, or people who have spiritual gifts, that they are people that are the only ones who can do this. All of us have an innate ability. We are hardwired on a soul level to be able to do this. It is something that you're either recovering or that you're learning how. And everyone has an intuition, everyone has an instinct, and everyone has the ability to listen to what is emanating from within their soul and the direction that is helping us to further our ongoing evolution. And it's something I'm really passionate about talking about and trying to help people recover that. Because I think so often there are people in these kind of fields who others, whether clients put them on a pedestal, or maybe that those people just aren't telling them that you have the ability to do this. It can be learned, it can be reconnected with, it can be recovered. And so I just want to put that out there, that this is a time where you can recover this natural function within your soul as a way to heal. And Pallas there, being this octave transformer, is really helping a lot of us heal our trauma and the dynamics that we've also chosen to come into in this lifetime. So this is what I wanted to put out today. And I hope you guys have a beautiful week, and I will see you all soon.